Mountain Vineyards, and I am so thrilled to welcome you to our Taste of Virginia series tonight, Time Machine to 2019. And you all must have been as ready to escape 2020 as I am, because we were amazed by the number of people who shared this, purchased the packs, are tasting along with us tonight. And I wanted to start off by just giving some special shout outs. One of the most heartfelt feelings that we received at Early Mountain was a note from an ER doctor in Denver who purchased the pack, sharing that they were going to be tasting along with their friends who are also ER doctors in Richmond and joining us this evening. And I'm so thrilled that we are able to give some escape, some respite from the craziness that is 2020. And really just cheers to you and to everyone out there who's on the front lines of this. So thank you, and thank you for joining us. Thank you to everyone who's out there. So just to give you a little overview, this Taste of Virginia series, now we're in our third week. It's meant to bring together our friends, our winemakers that we're very close with throughout the Virginia wine industry, and bring together some of our favorite wines the same way that we do in Early Mountain's tasting room as part of our Best of Virginia program. And this is a super fun one because some of our best friends are really part of it with us. So Kirsty Harmon from Blenheim is going to be joining. Rachel Stinson Vrooman from Stinson Vineyards. We have Lucie Morton, who's a globally renowned viticulturist who also works in the Early Mountain Vineyards and helps support us there. Erin Scala, many of you know her as Scala over at Common House, or perhaps you frequent her amazing wine shop in Keswick in Vino Veritas. And then our very own Maya Hood-White, who's our associate winemaker and also oversees our vineyards. So amazing lineup. And we'll be tasting for about an hour. Sometimes the conversations run a little long. We'll try to keep it to an hour on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday. But get your wines open, whatever you're tasting. Feel free to don't wait for us. Start tasting. And what we thought would be really fun in this concept of Time Machine to 2019 is not just to taste for stunning expressions of 2019, and not just stunning in taste, but I was just absolutely struck by how beautiful they look side by side. But to also take a little bit of a tour through the vineyard year. So one of the things that we love when we're welcoming guests to our winery is that our vineyards surround us. In Virginia wine country, we're just surrounded by so much beauty and life and vines. And 2019 was such a fantastic growing season. And so while we taste along, the various winemakers are also going to be just giving us a quick little calendar year of the vineyard as well. Please ask questions. You can type it into the Facebook chat below. We'll see them. We will try to get to all the questions. If we are not able to answer yours, though, we'll make sure that we go back and answer them either tonight or tomorrow. So let's keep it interactive and super fun. Quick preview. So a week from today, so our May 9th Taste of Virginia is a super fun one. And I did not come up with this name. I have to give credit to Maya because she came up with it. But it is called Moms and Their Winey Children. So W-I-N-E -Y, Moms and Their Winey Children. So 3 winemakers with their moms from some of our also really good friends at Veritas Vineyard. Patricia Hudson and her daughter Emily will be joining. Down at Ankita Ridge, absolutely beautiful property, very high altitude. Christine Vrooman and her son Nathan are going to be joining, who's also Rachel's husband. So there's lots of connections here. And then Maya and her mom are going to be joining. And we're going to be tasting a wine that's a side project for Maya called RAH that's named for her grandmother, her mom's mom. So really, really fun one for Mother's Day. Please feel free to join in, select wines if you'd like to taste along, or just, meet up with your mom virtually and taste along with us. We'd love to have you. So I am thrilled to welcome one of my good friends in wine, good friends in real life, Erin Scala. And I'm going to bring her on. There you go, Erin. There you are. All right. Welcome, Erin.
Well, hello. How's everybody out there? Cheers to you.
Cheers.
We're super glad to be here today. And we have a really interesting structure for you. We're going to be talking about the vineyard year of 2019. So we have our year, our calendar year that we think of as the 4 seasons or the 12 months. But the winemakers think about the year quite differently. Aileen, do you want to go a little bit more into it?
Well, sure. Well, let's go ahead and bring on, so Erin, as I said, Scala from Common House, as well as In Vino Veritas. Let's go ahead and bring Kirsty on so that we can start talking a little bit, encourage people to start sipping the wines, and she's going to take us through kind of the first season. So welcome, Kirsty.
Oh, can I jump back in one more time?
Thank you. It's exciting and nerve-wracking to be here, but thanks for including Blenheim in your lineup today. I don't know if you want me to start with the wine or start with sort of the vineyard side of things, or if you have a preference.
Ooh, I have an idea to start. So I kind of wanted to start with the grape variety because
perhaps we'll just start tasting the Riccazzatelli. So this is the 2019 Riccazzatelli. This is 100% Riccazzatelli, and it comes from Horton Vineyards in Orange County. It's the vineyard that you see as you drive into the driveway at Horton. It's the vineyard on the right-hand side, and that's a 6-acre block of Riccazzatelli. So I started working with Riccazzatelli in 2016 when I was needing a little bit more white grapes, and there was a little late frost that year as well, so a little less fruit on the market. And so I called and asked if they had any interesting white grapes, and they told me, how about Riccazzatelli? So I said, great, I'll take 6 tons. And then I had to look up to find out what it actually was. But after working with it 1 year, I absolutely fell in love with it. It's a really funky, squishy, slimy grape that you cannot destem. So you have to whole cluster press it. So I whole cluster pressed this, settled it for a night, and then fermented it in stainless steel, and it's 100% stainless steel. That's it, filtered and then bottled. So pretty straightforward winemaking. But I think it's a really interesting white because it looks like almost like water in your glass. It almost looks like you've poured something that isn't wine, but I think it packs a really interesting aromatic and textural punch.
Riccazzatelli is one of the world's oldest grape varieties. If you haven't had it before, it's pretty fascinating. It comes from the country of Georgia, and some people think it dates back to at least 3,000 years. Legend in Georgia says that it actually dates back to Noah's Ark, although there's no evidence of that. But people say they found seeds in amphoras that are from 3,000 BC, which is pretty cool, which makes this an incredibly old grape variety. It was brought to the United States originally by Constantine Frank in New York, and also by Dennis Horton in Virginia. So this wild grape is one of the first grapes to really be here in the state of Virginia. And it's super useful because it stands up to the climate, which is what I wanted to ask you about, Kirsty. How do you find Riccazzatelli behaving in the vineyard?
Kirsty, maybe you're not able to hear Erin. Oh,
I'm hearing her through another phone, but I'm not hearing anything, I'm afraid.
Oh, no, but you can hear me, right?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, awesome. So Erin asked how you find Riccazzatelli in the vineyard. So she just did an overview of its history as one of the earliest Georgian grape varieties and how it came to the U.S. But how does it behave in the vineyard?
Well, since we don't grow it here at Blenheim, it's grown at Horton Vineyards. They have it on an open lyre system. The trunks are actually, it's a really massively awesome looking vine. Horton trains it in a lyre, which means one trunk comes up and then it splits multiple ways. And so the fruit is sort of extended in a U shape down the vineyard. So it's a really impressive vineyard to walk in because you can kind of stick your head under the vines and be inside the lyre system and see all of the fruit hanging. It's a really massive cluster. It doesn't do so well with a lot of rain. In 2018, there wasn't much Riccazzatelli from that particular block because it did sort of fall apart in the rain in 2018. But 2018 was a really lovely dry year. We ended up harvesting. They ended up harvesting it for us around the 20th of September. So fairly late in terms of wine, but still very much in the thick of harvest season.
This wine has a really interesting texture. It's almost like rich and viscous in an interesting way, but then there's this acidity that sneaks in and almost like a tannic finish. Do you think that's the grape variety, or do you think it's how you're working with the grapes?
So the question was a little bit of a tannic finish, whether or not, I know you said that you can't destem it, and so it's going into the press whole cluster.
That's right.
Is that possibly what's giving it some of that kind of tannic intensity through the finish?
The skins are really, really tannic anyway. If kind of the middles are really slimy, but the skins, they are relatively not super thick skinned, but there definitely is a tannic structure to that. And I think it's just the juice being in contact with that. I think it's just, that's where the tannins are coming from.
Awesome. Kirsty, would you mind scooting a little closer to the microphone? I'm just getting a few notes that it's a little hard to hear.
Sure. I also don't talk very loud, which might also not help our case.
No, but that's a lot better. So then, kind of with the theme of the vineyard here, you get to start with pruning.
Yep.
And I'm going to pull up a picture from Early Mountain that is showing a vine that's basically been pruned, cane pruned. And do you want to kind of take us through, first of all, when does pruning happen? What's the purpose for it?
Yeah, so pruning happens in the dormant season. So usually we start pruning in December into the early spring. You want to prune when the vines are dormant, and the main job of pruning is to get rid of the previous year's growth. So it's sort of resetting the vineyard in some ways to start for the new year. So all of the growth from last year is cut off in pruning, and then you're setting yourself up, whether you're cane pruned or spur pruned, for the next year's growth. It's a really important, very skilled task that is not easily done. If you don't know what you're doing, you can really set yourself up for later problems. So it's really important to know what you're doing when you're pruning and to prune smartly. Every single vine is its own puzzle because they're not always the same. So it's a really challenging but really thought-provoking time because you are really setting that vine up for the rest of the year, and it's really important to do it in a skilled way.
And is that, are you personally doing a lot of the pruning? Are you out there watching your team?
Yeah, I do some pruning, not very much, honestly. I would love to do more, but certainly keeping an eye on it and talking to John, our vineyard manager, to see how pruning is progressing. You prune in the opposite order that you harvest. So if you harvested Chardonnay first, you would prune Chardonnay very last. Obviously, you want to prune as late as possible because of various reasons, but you want to prune in early spring. You want to prune ahead of bud break, obviously.
Well, speaking of bud break, so that's kind of next in our vineyard year.
Yeah.
And
yeah, bud break is one of the most exciting times of the entire year because you go out into the vineyard and you see what looks like sticks. They are vines, but there's no growth. And then all of a sudden you start to see buds sort of swelling and then new growth emerging. And it's really exciting because it's really the start of the year and it kind of kicks off the growing season. It's an exciting time, but also a very nerve-wracking time because those green shoots that you see or those green leaves that you see are very tender and very susceptible to frost. In 2019, we didn't have any significant frost issues. Bud break for us in 2019 was the 29th of March, which was relatively early compared to years past. Normally, we're about the 10th of April. Last year was the 29th of March. This year was the 14th of March. So the reason that's important is because realistically, the last frost date is usually around the first week of May, give or take. And so if you have a bud break that happens in the first week of April, you have about 4 weeks of sleepless nights worrying about the weather. If bud break happens in March, you now extend those sleepless nights to a period of 8 weeks where anything can happen. But anyway, depending on the year, 2019 was an awesome year, no issues with frost.
Yeah, that's what we're focusing on, the positives with the 2019.
For those of us who don't have a bunch of stuff invested in actual vineyards, bud break for me is one of the most exciting times of the year. As soon as those buds comes out, it's almost like it's what hails spring. You see the red bud on the trees, you see the buds coming out in the vineyard, and it's one of the most exciting times. But it's also cool because it comes on the heels of pruning, and grapevines actually in nature, they just want to grow up trees. They want to kind of like grow up trees and almost behave like a tree, and they'll grow and grow and grow. A single grapevine can cover an entire building if you let it. And so pruning is so important to just sort of like tighten up that vine, make it this one little unit so that the grapes go right where you want them to, so that you can pick them how you want. So it's kind of interesting how we've figured that out over the years.
So a few quick notes. One is Megan Webster is saying that she loves the pear aromas on this wine. And I get kind of that almost pear skin, like when you're holding up to see if the fruit is ripe. And Matthew Perry said to make sure to show the bottle. It is absolutely gorgeous.
Thanks.
It will be backwards though on the screen because of how this all works. But I very much can appreciate Sue Calamine's comment. She's asking about the name of the wine. I had to practice saying this many, many times in the mirror. So it's Arcatsatelli. And once I heard that its nickname is Arcats, then I was like, okay, I can kind of get it now. So Arcatsatelli. And I think to me it's kind of similar to Gruner Veltliner to, I don't know, what other ones do you think it's similar to, Erin?
It reminds me of Gruccetto a little bit, and also of Verdicchio, in the way that it has that mid-palate richness and density, but then this sort of zingy finish, this kind of crisp, lean finish with a little bit of tannin. It's really nice. Mm-hmm. And it's also for anybody tuning in that might not be familiar with Arcatsatelli. In Virginia, I've seen it mostly as a white wine, but a lot of people make it as an amber wine or an orange wine where they ferment it with the skins too. So sometimes if you see Arcatsatelli on a menu and you order it, sometimes you'll get it and it won't be this sort of brilliant white color. It will be more of an orange hue. And you'll find it anywhere on that spectrum. So it's kind of fun to experiment with the different Arcatsatellis you may find in the market.
And people usually ask, they haven't yet, but I'm gonna go into some brains and assume that people are wondering what to drink this with. What do you think, Erin?
Oh my gosh. For me, this is the classic wine for pork, for pork or chicken, for anything that a red wine might be too heavy with, but that a white wine might not be enough for, because you want something with a little bit of oomph, a little bit of texture, a little bit of palate density, but also something with that hint of tannin at the end makes it excellent with a protein, or even with cheese, because those tannins are going to bond with the proteins in whatever meat or protein that you choose, or cheese, and you're going to have this incredible experience. So if anybody has cheese in front of them or pork, kudos to you, go for it. And, it's interesting that you said Gruner Veltliner, because in the same way, that's also how you'd pair Gruner Veltliner usually as well.
Yeah.
How about you? Any ideas?
I was just planning on asking you the question. I think there's definitely the versatility, something that has some fattiness to it. I hadn't thought of going as heavy as like a pork roast, but I could definitely see that because of the texture.
I kind of want it with an oyster right now also, like a big Virginia oyster.
Absolutely. There is a little bit of almost a saline note there, or that little bit of edginess that comes through as either more of that tannin note or a little bit of minerality.
And another thing about Arcatsatelli is that I wrote an article about this several years ago, but the Virginia agriculture scene is sort of blossoming with all these little boutique agriculture businesses coming to light, whether it's a creamery making handmade cheeses. We have incredible little pork farms like Autumn Olive Pork, and who else is making amazing pork?
We work with Whiffletree Farms.
Whiffletree Farms, Polyface Farms. We have all this incredible pork products coming out of Virginia. And we have, of course, oysters like Rappahannock oyster. So we have all, and the number one product in Virginia, you might think it's wine, but it's actually chicken. Boiler chickens are the number one product that we make. And I think that this wine grown locally is a perfect pairing with some of these other agriculture products that Virginia has sort of been growing into. So we have a new Epicurean front ahead of us, and this is very much a part of it.
Wonderful. Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kirsty. We're going to bring you back at the end to share anything else you'd like to about Blenheim. But we will see you in a little bit. Taste along with us.
Thank you.
So next, we are bringing on Rachel Stinson Vrooman. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Yeah, and I will say, not to be too personal, but you ladies have something very much in common right now.
We have COVID babies. Born during coronavirus.
And we also have our first babies were born around the same time. And so our second babies were just born, I think, this month. Yeah. So it's
yeah.
It's fun. Mine's right here, actually. If she cries, you'll get to see her.
I ran away from mine. That's why I'm hiding in the winery.
Where I've been popping bottles, and I've been popping bottles all night long.
So thank you. I really appreciate you both joining. Especially when you have your hands quite full right now. So Rachel, tell us a little bit about Stinson.
Rachel, so this is your rosé, yeah?
Yes. So this is our 2019 Rosé of Mourvedre. We do two rosés, Rosé of Tannat and then the Mourvedre. So the Mourvedre, it's really fun for us. My dad and I are both big fans of Bandol wines, both the rosés and the reds. So we were able to originally source some Mourvedre in Virginia, and that's kind of what started this wine for us. We found that the people that love Mourvedre really, really love Mourvedre because it's just such an interesting grape both to work with and for drinking too, because it's so age-worthy, even in a rosé. That's been really fun for us. So we do stainless steel ferment. We cold soak about 8 hours on the skins and then press off and ferment in stainless steel. We do a little bit of stabulation, which is holding it on the gross lees for up to like a week or so and stirring it every day. And that gives it some extra aromatics, a little bit more structure. So everything we're doing with this wine is to make it like a nice, rich, age-worthy rosé while keeping some freshness too.
Rachel, I've always wanted to ask you why the two different rosés that you make, what was sort of the thinking in creating that structure as a winery instead of blending them together, presenting the Tannat and then Mourvedre separately?
Yeah. Well, we thought that both varietals deserved to be bottled on their own, and it wasn't something we just wanted to make. Our goal wasn't just to make a rosé. Our goal was to really see what we could pull out of each varietal. And so they're very different wines. The Tannat, we call it a rosé. It's really a Tannat Blanc. It's direct to press Tannat, which is a pretty dark color because Tannat's so dark skinned, but that's just kind of a more like fresh, fruity, fun rosé, easy drinking.
And this is like the age-worthy.
Yeah, they're thinking man's rosé.
Well, one thing to me that's so notable, I opened my bottle actually 2 days ago because I was sharing it with Maya in the tasting, and so I hadn't tasted it since then. And I tasted it then, and now tasting it
better now, right?
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. Yeah. Which to me shows like, yeah, hold this 2 years or a year. I mean, drink it now, buy a lot, and then hold some, drink some.
Yeah, Mourvedre, it has a tendency to be a little bit reductive in winemaking, which means it needs oxygen. That's one of the reasons I think why it ages so well. So this is pretty young in its life. We just bottled it end of January, and it does need oxygen at this stage.
Yeah, so everyone, I'd encourage you that if you're able to resist drinking it all tonight, revisit it a day or two. It has this incredible, almost like baked strawberry compote flavor now. I mean, it's opened up incredibly. It was delicious when I opened it, but wow.
Rachel, can you speak for a second about Mourvedre in Virginia?
Yeah, that's obviously not widely planted. It's a roan varietal, so it likes heat. It likes a long growing season, which we just don't have a long enough growing season. That's why it makes such a good rosé here. But it is the latest budding varietal we have, which works out well in a year like this year, where it's one of the few things in our vineyard that didn't get frosted. But then we harvest for the rosé like mid to late September, which is fairly late for a rosé. So were we to do a red with it, maybe it's possible. If we ever have a year where we think it's possible, we will try to attempt that. But so far, we've not seen that.
Yeah, and there's a question: where is the Mourvedre grown?
So in the 19, we actually have our estate block of Mourvedre finally came into production in 2019. So that's about half of it. The other half, we have an amazing grower in Richmond. I actually want to give a shout out to her family, Rhea Hale. We just found out this week that she passed away after losing a battle with cancer. But she just kind of had 3/4 of an acre of just Mourvedre. She's just a Mourvedre enthusiast. Loved the grape, and we hooked up with her and have been working with her since her first harvest. So,
oh goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that, Rachel.
Yeah.
Erin, do you want to share your tasting notes on the wine?
Sure. Very much like the first wine we had, this wine also has this incredibly rich and dense mid-palate, which is probably from your work with the lees. For anyone listening that's not familiar, lees are essentially the yeast cells in the wine. So if you can imagine, during the fermentation, the yeast are eating the sugars in the grapes, and then the yeast actually engorge themselves, and eventually it becomes too high of an alcohol environment, and they explode and they fall to the bottom of the tank. And as they're decomposing yeast bodies are sort of like absorbing into the wine, they send off all these flavors, and you end up with a different texture and it's almost a different flavor of the wine because of the yeast. So I actually personally love wines with a lot of yeast work in them because you get that weightiness on the mid palate. So like if you just try the wine, like it kind of sits on your tongue, it's a little more intense. I almost want to have it with like a creamy, ooey gooey, stinky cheese, something like Epoisse or something. But it would also go really well with the sunset. Even charcuterie. This is a rosé that can stand up to something like a rare steak on the grill, or like a plate of salamis and charcuterie. Like I'd want to put this with something a little bit heavier than your typical rosé fare.
Yeah, definitely salty cured meats. Yum. And then also kind of almost into Pinot Noir territory, like grilled salmon or a number of different grilled fishes, which you really love.
And someone asked, we have some funky notes on the nose. Is that something that you can look forward to, or is that something that's common in Mourvedre? And I would say yes. Whenever you have, like, if you have a red Mourvedre, it tends to be earthy, meaty. These tend to be some of like the meatiest wines that you can find. Sometimes you'll find one that's made in more of a fruit style, but if it's made in kind of like an old world extended red maceration style, you get these roasted meats in the wine and an earthiness to it. And I think you're getting hints of that in this rosé, even though it's harvested early in September.
Yeah, it's almost like a gaminess. And I think that's a little bit of that is the reduction, but a little bit of it is just, there's these great savory notes in the varietal. And you do get that in the rosé.
Reduction's another thing. You could be smelling any wine that's under screw cap will usually have just a hint of reduction in it, and so it'll smell a little bit like a little funkiness right off the start, and that will blow off and evolve in about 10-20 minutes. But it's still fun. Like, to me, reduction is a part of the wine experience, so I kind of look forward to it. I love wines that have a little bit of reduction because it typically means that they age a little bit longer and that they can last a little bit longer. You can open it up in the fridge and it'll still be good 3 days later. Whereas if you open up a wine and there's no reduction, the chances that it will be good 3 days from now are a lot lower. Reduction is almost like a preservative.
So let's shift back to our kind of vineyard year exploration. And so we're going to talk next about, so last we did bud break, got into mid-May. We're past any worries about frost. And this picture is a little bit later in the growing season, but I wanted to talk a little bit about canopy management. And, kind of then what are we doing with all of that crazy green growth? And I love my office at Early Mountain looks out on the vineyard, and in kind of mid-May into June, it's like you can literally watch the canopy growing, and you see this bright, vibrant green as like the furthest out pictures, and then it kind of all turns into this nice deep green color.
Yeah, in Virginia, we have so much growth, which, it just requires a lot of canopy management, but we have a lot to work with. We have a lot of canopy to ripen the grapes. So you'll start off the beginning of the season doing shoot thinning or bud thinning, depending how early you start. And if you'll just go through, if you have extra buds or if they've grown into shoots, you'll just select however many you think the vine can support to ripen the fruit. So we cane prune. So we do a couple shoots in the center, and then we'll do 4 or 5 on either side of the vine. And then after that, we'll go through and do hedging, which is what it sounds like, just basically trimming the top of the vines. We usually let ours get to about 7 feet, maybe 3 feet of canopy, and then chop it. And it depends on the year how often we have to go through and do that. 2018, where it was really rainy, we had to probably do every other week. 2019, where it was hot and dry, maybe every 3 weeks. And then as the vines start putting their energy into ripening the fruit, they're putting less energy into shoot growth. So at that point, it slows down. We'll do a little bit of fruit thinning if we need to. Mourvedre block, we haven't needed to. Those vines are young and they're not producing up to their full potential yet. But going in and dropping fruit can help the fruit that is left ripen more uniformly. Then at Stinson, we also do bird netting. We pull bird netting, which is, you can see some here, which is just covering the fruit zone, pulling up netting over the fruit zone so that the birds can't go after the ripe berries. So we'll do a lot of leaf pulling before we do that and just get all the leaves out of that fruit zone so it can ripen once the netting's up. And then that'll take you to veraison, which is when the grapes start turning color. And then we start freaking out about harvest supplies.
So here's a grape bunch mid-veraison.
Yeah, for those that don't know, red grapes don't come out red. They're actually starting like if you walk into a red wine vineyard, you don't know it until the middle of summer when the grapes go through this process here, where the green grape, all grapes start off green, and then halfway through, some of them, the red ones turn red. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it was scary, like that picture when they are, like it almost looks diseased, but they just all turn at a little bit different times.
One of the neat things is that when a vine is growing, those leaves that you saw in the earlier picture, you almost want to think of them as like solar panels, and they're like soaking up energy from the sun and bringing it to the plant. So you can imagine if you had solar panels on your roof, and then you took 3 of them away, you lose some energy for your house. It's the same thing with a grapevine, and so winemakers can go in and say, "Oh, my grapes are ripening too fast. Snip, snip, snip. Oh, my grapes, I want them to ripen fast." They can tweak the canopy by editing their solar panels on each grapevine, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, and we have uneven ripening too. We'll go through and drop the clusters that are ripening later. So once they turn color, we won't be able to tell which ones are ripening later. So we can go in and do that detail work.
Cool. Right as veraison's happening is when you like to do that?
Yeah.
Also, the birds, we talk about putting up nets nets to keep the birds out because they're vineyard pests. But if you really think about it, grapes are designed. So they're designed to go up trees, and they're designed to like put out fruit to attract birds so that the birds will eat the grapes and then spread their seeds all throughout the rest of the forest. So in a way, we are the actual vineyard pests because we're keeping the birds out who their grapes are actually for. And we said, no, those grapes are going to be ours now. And it's a wonderful thing they are.
Funny story about another vineyard pest that I'll have to give Maya a hard time on. But, birds aren't the only issues winemakers in Virginia need to deal with. There's deer and there's also bear. And so our Quaker Run Mountain Vineyard, I was there with Maya in 2018. And, she was leading a group and talking about how, yes, there's a family of bears and sometimes they like to eat the fruit, but, we should share. There's no problem. Like, of course it's fine for the bear to eat some of the grapes. And we left, and she called me about an hour later. Oh my gosh, the bear must have heard me. Next thing she knew, the whole family was like, rumbling through the vineyard. And they got all of our Malbec that year. So we did end up then having to put up a bear fence to keep them out, because when they're hungry, they can eat quite a few grapes quite quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everything likes to eat grapes. There's few predators that don't.
And you had said that this was the first year that we're getting your estate Mourvedre.
Mm-hmm.
That's so exciting. So anybody with the 2019 in their glass, this is an historic bottling.
Yeah, it's exciting for us too.
Awesome. Well, cheers. Well, we will welcome you back at the end to hear more about Stinson. But thank you so much. This is delicious. And we love always including a Stinson Rosé as part of our Rosé flights at Early Mountain. It's been a long time. So.
Well, hopefully we can make it back out to Early Mountain soon.
Absolutely. So wonderful. So next we're going to welcome both Lucie Morton.
While you're switching over, somebody had commented that this wine goes great with chips. That sounds like such an awesome pairing. I wish I had potato chips right now. So anybody with potato chips in your house, I'd grab some.
All right. Welcome, Lucie. Hi. Lucie. All right. That's much better. How are you? Oh, sorry.
So proud of Virginia. Can you believe it? The diversity, the complexity, the quality. Erin, you buy wines from all around the world. I think if we did this tasting with blank labels, how many people do you think would guess they were from Virginia?
Not many.
No, I'm just so proud of the international complexity that we have these days.
You and your work.
Well, thank you. Well, I've been part of it all along, but I'm not sure I could have envisioned being here 40 years from when I got started to this tasting with 4 different international varieties, all made impeccably in the cellar. None of those wonderful wine flaws that we used to have in the early days when it was a little bit of amateur hour. This is so professional. And thank you for having me, Eileen.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So tell us a little bit about your history with Virginia wine and your role. Because you play a role with a lot of these wines.
My role in Virginia, or?
In Virginia, and then.
Well, I'm a viticulturist, and I love everything to do with grapevines. And I would say I'm born and raised in Virginia. And I've worked all around the world. I was educated in Europe. I got my degree at Montpellier, France. And so I learned everything for the first go round in French. But I have to say, to have watched the evolution here in Virginia and to have been part of it is just sensational. And there weren't a lot of females in the business when I got started. So to have this session here with all these female winemakers that's another part of it that I think has been really positive for our industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just like sing your praises a little bit? I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction. So for anybody that doesn't know Lucie Morton, she's you consult with wineries all over the world, and not just any winery, some of the best and top wineries in every country that you could imagine. It's amazing. I'll be traveling in New Zealand, and I'll be in some random winery in Central Otago, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, Lucie Morton was just here," and I'm like, "Okay." And here she is, living in my own backyard in Charlottesville, and it's just incredible. But you also have a mold named after you because you've worked with some, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a fungus. Yep, Phaeoacronia mortonii. Yeah.
Not a lot of people can say that. Yeah. And you are one of the people who can sort of look at grape leaves or walk through a vineyard and kind of tell where one clone ends and another begins, which is almost like a dying skill. You know, not many people are teaching that anymore, I think, with the dawn of DNA testing in vineyards, but it's an important skill to have for somebody in your field. And you've also brought, what I love about what you do is that you see what's going on in all these different places in the world, and then you're able to apply what you've seen and what you've learned to other places. Not so you'll be in Central Otago or in Italy or in France, and you'll see something, and then you'll apply it here, and then it suddenly it spreads like wildfire. Everybody starts doing it, and then suddenly the whole industry raises up a little bit, and I just. So most of you watching maybe don't know Lucie, but there's a little bit of Lucie in every glass of Virginia wine that you have, and she's behind everything in this really awesome way. So you're one of my sheroes. Just gotta.
Thank you, Erin. Good feelings mutual.
Okay, back to you. Sorry.
No, thank you for that. And I want to welcome Maya Hood-White, our very own Maya, as well. Get us back more horizontal. Welcome, Maya. Unmute you.
Oh, sorry. I may have muted myself.
No worries. Wonderful to see you again.
Thank you. You guys too.
So you're now a regular. We basically drink wine together every Saturday at 5.
I know. If there's ever a time it changes, I'm going to mess it up because it's like 5, that's it. There with Eileen.
Well, wonderful. Well, Maya's our associate winemaker, as well as in charge of our vineyards. But she's also the Pet Nat Queen. Is that our new designation for you? We call this Maya's Pet Project.
I do love a pun, Eileen. I do love puns.
I can't remember if I said it, but Maya's the one who came up with the Whiny Children for next Saturday. So kudos to Maya. Well, wonderful. Well, with you, we're kind of moving into harvest time. And so Pet Nat is a perfect wine to talk about in the context of harvest because, you know, as you're working 18-hour days, 4 in the morning till midnight, Pet Nat is kind of like having a baby, right?
Yeah.
And so do you want to kind of talk us through the process?
I feel like the new mothers here would specifically not like that comment. No, it's funny. So we started making Pet Nat in 2014, only because I was like, I did my research when I was in graduate school on sparkling wine. And at that point, that was back in like 2011. And that was not like Pet Nat and method ancestral wines were like nowhere to be found. There was like one place in California that would like started consistently making it then. There were a few others that I could find. But it was like every 3 years or so. So like when you wanted it, you couldn't really seek it out. Since then, it's obviously exploded. But when I came to Early Mountain in 2014, I was like, hey, I'd really love to try just making a little bit of this style of wine. And they're like, sure, great, go to town. And that consisted of me sitting on the cellar floor, just bottling, I think it was like 12 cases of Pet Nat. And then miraculously it worked. And then the next year I was like, well, we're really busy. I don't need to do this again. And it was my mom that came. She's like, I'll help you. And I was like, well, that's better than being alone, because you're doing this in the midst of harvest. So I guess to like rewind a little bit, if you think of, traditional method sparkling wine like champagne or, method champenois, method traditionnel, they are base wines that are made and then you're adding sugar back and yeast, creating that second fermentation. You cap it in the bottle and that's how you get the bubbles. With Pet Nat, what we're doing is we're actually bottling still fermenting must. So we have to hit it at this perfect mark with just the right amount of sugar. And sometimes that mark is at 2 a.m. right after you've picked 12 tons. And that's not always the most pleasant time, but so we've done it. Sometimes begrudgingly, but in 15, that was when we first started actually making it commercially available. And that was my mom was like, oh, I'll come help. It's like, we'll do this. And we started, it was a Syrah Rosé that we bottled. And that was, one of my favorites, actually. And we've started making less and less of that as we've had to pull Syrah out, unfortunately. But every year since then, she comes in and helps on the bottling days. And I think it's kind of the one where we're like, oh, we don't need to do this anymore. And we should definitely do it. We'll be there. So.
Well, this year my husband came. My kids were like playing in back. Because we call it like the pet nat signal. And that's what I meant, how it's kind of like having a baby is that you don't get to choose when it happens.
Oh, yes. No, definitely. Yeah. Everyone did.
I didn't really clarify that.
Yeah. No, it's really good. And I feel like I've just started extorting people for help because it's like, well, if I don't get help, we can't make this much. So it's worked, surprisingly. And like, obviously, the more people you have, the more you can do. So that's made it nice. But so the pet nat we have here, this is basically the first release of it. It's Malvasia Bianca based. We do have a little muscat in there and a small bit of Petit Manseng, which are basically from 2-year-old baby vines that we picked and we're like, let's throw it in with the other stuff. But relatively low alcohol. It's about 11%. For us, Malvasia they were vines we inherited from our predecessors, and they were planted, and we're like, well, we're not sure where they fit in the program, but we'll give it a whirl. And, we found that, pet nat is actually the best.
We like it with bubbles.
We like it with bubbles because it's so aggressively aromatic on its own, but in this like low alcohol, some years maybe it's a little off dry, other years it's dry, kind of, very vibrant style, and we're not looking when we're like actually fermenting and we're processing the fruit, we're not trying to keep all those aromatics. I think if you did and then you capped it, you would just be like blown away by potpourri in a bottle. So we give it a little bit more air to kind of give it a little bit more diversity in those types of aromatics. But this is the first year second year with Malvasia, first year that we've included like the muscat and the Petit Manseng as well. What I happen to really like about using the Malvasia, so as much as I complain about it in the vineyard and it's just sometimes aromatic, it's a really high protein grape. So you actually hold on to a lot of bubbles in the glass because there's nothing I will complain more about than when you pour a glass of sparkling wine and you have no bubbles left. And so there's not as much pressure in the bottle. So not as like many bubbles, and that bubble concentration is lower than you would have with a traditional sparkling wine or a Prosecco or, but because it has those high proteins, it actually holds those bubbles in suspension a little bit better. So, Lucy got it. She's pouring the bottle.
I have to take the cap off first.
So, and I do tend to be a sucker for like lower alcohol wines too. So it's nice to say it's like, hey, it's fresh and fruity and it's 11% alcohol. So.
One thing that bubbles go really well with is a little bit of fat. So if you have it with anything fried, like fried chicken or French fries, or Sarah, if you still have any of those potato chips left, try a potato chip with this and you'll just be like, oh, sometimes I just open up a bottle of bubbly and potato chips and I'm just in absolute heaven. But Maya, so you were talking about how you have to bottle pet nat at the exact right moment. And so that's why you call everybody right when the sugar levels are just right. What happens if you bottle too early?
It can explode.
They explode. Yeah.
Explode. So there's a calculation for basically grams per liter sugar left in your must, so your fermenting lot. And so it's every 4 grams per liter gives you 1 atmosphere of pressure. So it's a pretty easy calculation. So most champagne that you're drinking is between usually 4.5, but 5 to 6 atmospheres of pressure. So, typically bottle at 24 grams per liter. If we're taking bricks, that's 2.4 bricks, fermenting. We have a couple other, considerations to take into account as well. But, depending on how your fermentation's moving, it can go really fast and you can miss it. We were supposed to make the Malvasia pet nat in 2017 and it went dry from I think it was 5 bricks to the next day it was just done.
Wow.
Yeah. So we ended up doing something else. But, it's like you can miss it. So it's a lot of checking every day and going oh, every year I'm a little nervous that I'm going to miss the mark. And then we'll run a residual sugar, glucose, fructose test. It's a little bit more specific on it as well. And it's just, don't want it to explode, but also don't want to miss the mark and have to tell Eileen we don't have pet nat.
Wow. So
if you're the pet nat queen, I'm like the pet nat nag.
Literally, if you don't catch it in that hours period, that 2-3 hour period, you either have bottles that explode or you have a dry wine that's fermented all the way through.
Right. And so what makes it, to just add an extra level of excitement to ours, we use all ambient yeast. So we're not inoculating with commercial yeast or, basically adding anything to most of these lots. So those don't always have the most, perfect fermentation curve. Like usually you can kind of predict it and see where it's going. This was the laziest fermentation lot we had, I swear, last year. It was really annoying. I kept telling Eileen, this is the week. And it was like 3 weeks later that we bottled it. And I'm like, it's up on its own. So they're always kind of like their own unique character.
Well, in 2019, harvest was early and fast.
Oh, yeah.
And so you were crabby.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Eileen.
No, so that is how much we love PetNat, though, is that in these crazy days, we're still coming in on, I think we did this, it was either a Saturday or a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
All hands on deck because it's totally manual. We're bottling by hand.
Yeah.
Moving it from one pallet to another. But it's also some of the most fun teamwork time.
Yeah, no, it was fun. I think having everybody too, because it used to be like, my parents would come, I'd have a friend come, and like we have all the cellar work is going on at that time, so you can't go, oh, can I get some of the cellar guys to help too? It's like, no, they have actual things that they're doing. It's just a bunch of people that anyone we can corral up is perfect. I feel like Lucie, you need to come help one time.
No, thank you. 2 in the morning. I'm dead to the world. I do nothing between 2 and 5 in the morning.
It is not always 2. No.
No, if it's after 5 in the morning and up to midnight, but after that, you're on your own. I'll meet you in the vineyard for something, but not the cellar.
That is fair.
Okay.
Maya, one of my favorite things that you've ever said about vineyards is that they're a way to enjoy the vintage in the vintage. So it's like if you're making sparkling wine, typically, especially if you're making like champagne style sparkling wine, or you're trying to do something like that, you have to age it for years and years and years. And so but with PetNat, you can take some of your first grapes in, start your PetNat fermentation, bottle it, and then be able to drink it with your vineyard crew that year at the end of harvest. So it's a way to celebrate. It's the only way to celebrate harvest with the harvest. It's kind of cool.
That's so true. We did that this year too with this lot. Ben's like, do you want to open it when we do like our toast at the end of the sale? I was like, no, I'm still angry at it. But no, yeah. And that's, I feel like so we started, I'll hold this one up. But so it's still cloudy, as everyone can see. We did disgorge this, so it takes out a lot of the heavy lees, which is just the spent yeast. It's at the end of at the bottom of the bottle. Typically, it would be like up to here because it's the first fermentation. So you have a lot more solids left in it. So we've chosen to evacuate some of those solids by disgorging. We kind of we shake it so it gets all the leaves go into the neck. You riddle it into the neck, and then you kind of expel those. You pop them off, you disgorge it. Originally, we didn't disgorge them, and I always liked them undisgorged, and that's when they finish fermenting. You could just get them and go. Now that we have this extra step for some of the wines, it can take a little bit longer to get them to the market. But it's true. It's usually some of the first stuff that we release, and it's kind of it's a good memory of the vintage. I forgot I said that. Thank you.
Erin, I'm going to move you out for just 1 second, just so that I can share one of my favorite pictures. So this is what happens after a day of disgorging.
Okay.
So this was because
Thanks, Eileen.
I know. Now you're not going to come next Saturday.
I'll just set the computer up and walk away.
Poor Maya does it entirely by hand, disgorge, and it just shoots out. And then we're combining bottles, capping by hand, and sending out to the world.
I realized looking at that, there was no point in having an apron. Now I'm like, why? It's just another thing to take off. It's messy. That was, obviously we're drinking white. We do a red one too that is whole cluster Blaufränkisch from the Mount Airy vineyard that belongs to Ben Jordan, who oversees all the winemaking at Early Mountain, his family's farm. So they've in the past been able to send us some Blaufränkisch, and we've loved making it into PetNat. So
awesome. And there's a few more questions about the PetNat. So one is whether we consider this dry or off dry, and then the other is the label, the house on the label.
So I'll start with dry or off dry. So I consider this off dry this year. So it still has about 8 grams per liter sugar, residual sugar, which is not actually that much. but some years they go a little bit drier, and I'm going to attribute this to the lazy fermentation, but it actually worked out well because that would give us a little bit different of a bubble dynamic in this wine if we had more pressure. So with the 19 vintage and the acidity of it, I feel like the sugar actually plays quite nicely. It's funny, I feel like sometimes these wines kind of equilibrate on their own. So it's like they ended where they needed to end. So 17, or 8, can't even remember what year it is. The 18 went bone dry, much less acid. So with the bubbles, we had a few more of them, and it just kind of balanced out a little, very similarly in a way texturally, but, chemically different. But, and then the labels, so this is actually my favorite label, the Haunted House. We started using these for a series of wines called the Young Wines. They were sketches that when the Early Mountain label rebranded, we had a gentleman that was working on the rebranding, and we saw like on Instagram, like he did all these really cool sketches. And we're like, this would be awesome to put on a label. And he let us. So we started using them. I guess the first one was the rosé with the tree, and then we did a red, which is a bird, like a stork.
It's a really cool like moon.
It is, yeah. I like that was always my favorite. And then this one, the white, had a seahorse, which one person I think at all of Early Mountain liked, and that was Ben. So whenever I see it around, I like take a picture and send it to him. And we're just like, I just couldn't deal with the seahorse. It seemed just like a regrettable tattoo you get at a beach or something. So, but this reminded me of like the Charlie Adams cartoons, if you remember those from the New Yorker, back from like the 40s and 50s. So like what the Addams Family is based off of, so this Haunted House, and it's like, let's put that on there because it's such a dichotomy with this like really aromatic, fresh, almost like just pretty wine, and then to have this kind of weird, creepy, I realize I'm moving it the wrong way, this kind of weird, creepy house on the label.
I'm ready for some red.
Well,
Just saying.
Take us through harvest, fast forward through it. So
I feel like, Lucie, you and I have the easier part, because by the time we get to harvest, as long as we didn't mess anything up before, we're usually pretty good.
Right.
Yeah. But I've been talking. I'm going to let Lucie talk a little bit because I've just been, chatterbox.
Well, let's open up the swath because I see we're running a little out of time. I would just like to say that I drive my clients nuts by insisting on complexity in the vineyard, different rootstocks, different clones. They're like, oh my gosh, can't we just have Merlot? Do we have to have Merlot 343, 346, etc.? Maya, I really love working with you and all the young winemakers that I work with now who do the complexity in the cellar, because we don't know what Mother Nature's going to do. So to be able to have the flexibility as you do at Early Mountain with 2 sites with a lot of variability, with some of the same varieties under different conditions, to do a wine like Soif or a wine like Alluvium. In other words, you can make age-worthy Bordeaux reds, or you can make, let's enjoy them right now wines. And I really appreciate that you and Ben at Early Mountain, and I know some of the other winemakers here and others I work with, are able to adjust the wine style to what happened in the vineyard. Sometimes we can't control that because of the weather. So thank you for that.
Well, we appreciate your help and being able to follow you with any random questions. Like, have you ever seen this? Like, oh yeah, that's completely normal. Or like, can you just walk through with me and just make me feel at ease? Because something should be wrong, and we're yeah. No, it's I don't know. I've adored working with Lucie. It's wonderful, and she's such an integral part of our team at Early Mountain. So it's I'm glad she's able to participate in this tasting too. But
Thank you.
And so
tell us about Soif. I have a daughter in San Francisco, and all her friends are becoming Early Mountain fans in California with the free shipping and everything. And she really loves the Soif. So Julie, if you're watching, listen to what Erin has to say about this wine too, because I'd love to hear what Erin says, because she really is Miss Wine.
You're coming back, Erin. So Soif, and so it's our chillable red. It's our fresh, easy drinking style, early release bottled with rosé.
So this, so for the 19 vintage of Soif, so this did start in 17. It's kind of like we had a bumper crop year in 17, and something that everybody was mentioning is like we should do a chillable lighter red for the wine club. We're like, oh, different than what we've typically done, but like, we'll give it a whirl. We got fruit. And it took off surprisingly. So we're like, okay, 18 will make more. And as luck would have it, 18 was very challenging with the rains that we saw all season long. So the vintage naturally lent itself to lighter bodied wines anyway. So that happened to work out perfectly. And then with 19, it's a little bit darker than we've typically seen with the Soif, but it still has this really fresh, aromatics to it. And so what we do is we co-ferment part of this lot. So we co-ferment the Merlot and the Cabernet Franc together. And the Merlot, we do 100% whole cluster. So we don't take it off the cluster, or we don't destem it. We leave the rachis and the cluster intact. We then put the Cabernet Franc on it, ferment that together. And then we do the Cabernet Sauvignon on its own and blend that back later. And then we'll short press it. We'll press it a little early. So we press it before it's totally dry. So with reds, you're fermenting. Oh, go ahead.
How are you doing your Cabernet Sauvignon?
It's kind of semi-carbonic, light, fresh. It's, we don't feel that we have sites that really showcase Cabernet Sauvignon necessarily. So we tend to pick it a little bit earlier, and we go for just a lighter, fruitier style that we can use in Soif.
Destemmed whole berries?
Destemmed whole berries, yeah. So for the most part, we do whole berry. We do surprisingly little crushing, but we'll do some stomping after the fact. So we'll maybe delisage, we'll get in the tank when they're fermenting and do some stomping on the cap to break up the berries. Less less crushing going into the fermentation tank.
And whole cluster with the Merlot, the stems are on the whole cluster.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. We just throw in that's the easiest thing to process. They just go right in. It's great.
Sorry, nerd question. The Cabernet Franc, that goes in on top.
It's going in on top.
Crushed?
Nope, just whole berry, destemmed.
Whole berry. Okay, gotcha.
Whole berry, destemmed. Yeah, and lots of dry ice here. We want like a really protected environment because we're going for like fresh aromatics, fruitiness. So dry ice just being, condensed CO2. So we keep it very, very well protected. So oxygen is not your friend in these cases. But yeah, so then we'll press it when there's still a little bit of sugar left. So as you get more and more alcohol, you're extracting more phenolics, tannins, and aromatic compounds from the fruit. We're not looking for a lot of that, a huge textural component and grippiness from the wine. So we press it, finish fermenting it in tank, and then it goes to barrel, all neutral. So we're not looking for oak impact on here. We want a little bit of that oxygen exchange a barrel will give us, but no real, barrel oak toast impact for the wine. And this is bottled when we bottle rosé. So the goal is to get it out early. And really just a fresh, chillable red. It really showcases the best when it is chilled.
Yeah. Cool. This wine is like a wine without pretense. For anybody drinking it in their glass right now, it goes down super easy. The name Soif. It's also what you would call glue or like gluggable, chuggable wine. It's a nice one to kind of drink. I had mine in the fridge. As soon as I saw the word Soif on the label, I was like, that's going in the fridge. We're going to chill on it. Can you imagine how good this would be with like a barbecue brisket or something like that, or like a pork barbecue sandwich? It has this richness and lushness and fruitiness to it, but it also has this like hint of the Bordeaux blend complexity going on behind it. And then those tannins kind of sneak in at the end, and they're like, it's almost like I'm a super fun wine, but I'm also serious with the tannins.
Yeah. It hits you right at the very end. Yep.
This style of wine was not super popular, I would say, like in the 1990s, early 2000s. And then more recently, it's becoming more and more popular as a lot of people are making wines like this. And I was asking her the questions about the whole berry or whole cluster, because a lot of the smells and aromas that you're getting are from a fermentation that's happening inside of the berry. Once you crush the berry, you get a different kind of fermentation that gives you a more like classic Bordeaux style of winemaking. But with a wine like this, you're getting these really cool, juicy, fruity flavors that make the wine what it is, really. And all that's happening inside of the berry. So it's kind of cool how like this same grape combination can make one style of wine that's more classic, more tannic, more intense, more wild. And then it can make another style of wine that's fruit forward and fun and drinkable and gulpable, all because of the fermentation happening inside or outside of the berry. Pretty cool.
Erin, I have a quick question. Do you think the fact that it changes when it's cool and then as it warms up, it evolves? And to me, and my daughter Julie mentioned this the other day, it gets spicier. Does that mean maybe there's a little potential of positive evolution in the next year or two with this wine? Or do you think it's going to die because of the style that Maya did?
I think that most wines have a lot longer in them than we think. personally. Like I age a lot of stuff and I have a lot of experiments going. I bought a bunch of like super cheap wine, like in 2005, 2006. And I just like every year I buy like some really bad wine just to see how it ages. You know, I just want to try it 10 years later and see, and compare it to other wines. And this is not that. This is something different. This is like a cool wine that's meant to be enjoyed in the moment, but that still has enough complexity in it to last another couple of years.
I think with these grapes, it does, personally. Yeah.
And the tannin structure that you see, maybe the fruitiness would go down, but it has enough structure, acid, and tannin to last it through, I think. So
I think so. It'll change, but in a positive direction.
Let's do this again next year and revisit.
I'm in.
Well, awesome. Well, I know, first of all, talking about all the food and a wine like this, I'm getting a little hungry. So I want to be sensitive to keeping us sort of within our hour. I don't think we'll ever quite stay within the hour, but we're
getting closer.
We're getting closer. But Erin, before we bid you farewell, is there anything you'd like to share about your shop, about Common House, about your life? When can we have you back? Saturdays at 5?
Oh, cool. Let's see. Yes. So I have a wine shop that's open Tuesday through Saturday. Pop by anytime. We've got wine. And then I'm also at Common House and we're doing virtual events all the time, which is really fun. So pop into some of those. I would love to see you. Yeah. And I love being with all these amazing powerhouse ladies. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, Miss Maya, I'm going to bid you farewell. And welcome.
Perfect. I'll see you guys later. Thank you
Bye,
so much.
everybody. Thank you for including me. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucie.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, Lucie. Awesome. So I'm going to bring back Kirsty and welcome back to here.
Thanks. It's what a nice lineup of wines.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to welcome back Rachel as well.
Thanks, guys. I'm enjoying most of these.
Well, awesome. Well, I wanted to have a chance to learn just a little bit more about what you guys have going on. So, Kirsty, do you want to share anything coming up at Blenheim that everyone should be aware of?
Yeah, sure. So while we are closed to the public, we are still very much active in bringing you all any Blenheim wines that you might want. We have free shipping over $50. We are doing home deliveries in the Charlottesville area, a pickup in Richmond. If you need wine, we can get you wine. Just be in touch. We're so thankful for all of you that have ordered, and it's thanks for including us in tonight's tasting lineup. It's been really fun.
Well, wonderful. Well, Kirsty, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope to see you in real life very, very soon. Absolutely delicious.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And how are things at Stinson? What do you have going on?
Same as Kirsty, we're so thankful for everyone that's supporting Virginia wine right now. We are also open for pickups Thursday through Sunday, curbside pickups, free shipping on 4+ bottles, free delivery to the Charlottesville area on 4+ bottles. So we know it's a hard time for everyone, and if you need to support local wine, we'll get it to you.
And I am so obsessed with this rosé, so I am definitely placing an order for more.
Cheers.
Awesome. Well, cheers. And we look forward to welcoming your husband and mother-in-law.
Yes, it should be a fun one.
Next Saturday.
So tuning in. Thanks everyone for organizing and hosting all these. It's a fun excuse to get us out of the house, and this is the first time that I've put makeup on in 7 weeks. So
you were giving me a thing, and the fact that a baby like 6 weeks ago is so, cheers. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Wonderful. And as I said, our next tasting is Moms and Their Whiny Kids. So Taste of Virginia, Saturdays at 5. Very much to see you all there next week as well. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Have a wonderful Saturday. Cheers.